Anomalies.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. This is a program about things seen out of the corner of one's eye, about shadows and what lurks in those shadows. This is a program about the unexplained and the unexplainable.
Dave Jinks, welcome to another episode of Anomalies. You and I have been for a while. One of the good things about this job is we get to meet very interesting people, and our guest today is going to be certainly fall in that category. So I've got a question for you before we bring Jim on. What's the most famous, in your way of thinking, what's the most famous UFO case you've ever been exposed to?
Oh, well, Roswell springs to mind in the U.S., but, when you're looking at the U.K., you've got another one that hopefully our guest will be speaking at length about here. And you know what I'm talking about, Dan, right?
Yes, case of Rendlesham Forest. And Jim, ahead of time, kind of told us this really isn't a case about UFOs. So let's get on. We'll start the discussion. This is retired U.S. Air Force Sergeant Jim Penniston coming to us today. He wrote a book along with a co-author, the Rendlesham Enigma. It's always nice to have people who were there tell you what happened. So, Jim, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's nice to be on here. I actually didn't think we were going to make this happen. It was like we're going back and forth. I tell you, it's just so busy with these. Everything's being done now virtually, so it makes it more difficult.
Well, you are a very popular guest, so we're delighted to have you here for sure to kind of give us some clarification on this very confusing case that happened how many decades ago? It's been, 40 years. 40 years. And there's still so much misinformation, so much confusion about every aspect of this incident or these series of incidents, and we need you to help clarify a lot of that for us.
Okay. I don't think it helped that I didn't retire until 93, so there was a good head start on everybody putting out, disinformation. And I really don't want to slam all the people that are, trying to make a buck off it. I guess that's what they're doing. So I will talk to, I'll take any question you got about any of the disinformation stuff. I'll be glad to talk about it.
Okay, we're not going to pick any fights with anybody, but we might ask your opinion about things. So first of all, tell us where Rendlesham Forest is located.
Well, it's located in the UK. It's about 60 miles as a crow flies from London, northeast of there.
Okay.
Sits on the coastline there by the North Sea. Some of the little towns around it are Woodbridge and Ipswich and places like that. It is at the time it was the largest tactical fire wing in the United States Air Force. It occupied two bases that were separated by 3 miles. In between the two bases, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge was Rendlesham Forest. And the main operating base was Bentwaters. Our satellite base was Woodbridge. We only had 2 squadrons of A-10s there. The rest of the operational resources, the command and control element, all that kind of stuff was on Bentwaters. So we would go ahead and post from Bentwaters, and we'd go over to Woodbridge to do our shifts and stuff like that.
What were two, and ostensibly these were RAF bases, but Americans stationed there. How did that come about?
Well, my version of it, versus, the honest Air Force version of it, well, in World War II, we used England as an aircraft carrier, and we launched our missions to Germany from there. Bentwaters was actually a RAF base, fighter base. Woodbridge was a retrieval base, like if you had a B-17 or something like that was coming in, damaged, it would land there because I believe it, at the time it was the longest runway in Europe. So they would use that base there for B-17 recoveries and stuff like that. The whole area of the county of Suffolk, where Bentwaters and Woodbridge are located, and just to the north is Norfolk. Those are all where all the American bases were. We had, like, bases at Mildenhall, Rendlesham, Martlesham Heath, which was in between Woodbridge and Bentwaters. That was actually an RAF fighter base too. And so right after the war, we took it over. I can't remember exactly, maybe 46, 47, something like that. And we occupied it all the way up through 93. We had a 99-year lease. I mean, they had to pay us back somehow for the Lend-Lease Act. So that was a freebie for us. So it was actually American base, even though it had RAF on it under the Status of Forces Agreement. And to give the British a little bit more honor, they kept RAF on it. And they would put a squadron commander, a British MOD squadron commander, RAF. He was there, but he was more of a token than anything else. We did American operations out of there in support of NATO. Our classification system was did allow some classified information to go to the British. We'd make it, UK, release it with the UK forces, but I'll tell you right now, 98% of all the classified information going on at that base was under American hands and never, was given to the British. One of the things that remained top secret for years, if it wasn't top secret, but it was secret, I believe, was the fact that Bentwaters had storage of nuclear weapons. They just declassified that a couple of years ago, and so I can talk about it. And so we did have storage for that. We had no operational capability of delivering nuclear weapons with A-10s there. I mean, they were left over from the F-4 days. I don't know if you're a history buff or not, Dan. I don't know on British history, but that's really the crust of it.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of supposition that there were nukes at Bentwaters, but like you just referred to, it was top secret, and so it was rumored to be true, but not necessarily validated.
Right. Yeah, right. But the MOD knew. I mean, they knew that. I mean, but some of the problems with that came from with the cruise missiles under Reagan and that being put in at Molesworth, and they had people camped out there and they were protesting the nukes and all that. So it made it even more sensitive about other bases having storage of it. So, yeah, the Brits were pretty upset about that, the cruise missiles situation. And so the fact that we had nuclear weapons in Britain is, well, at least at Bentwaters is now declassified, so I can talk about it.
How long had you been there before December of 1980?
It's my second. Well, it's my second tour of duty. I had the first tour of duty was in 75 to 77, and I was at RAF Elconbury, and that was over in Cambridgeshire, and that's at about maybe 20 minutes from Cambridge, England. So it's probably about 85 miles from Bentwaters, but I had a tour of duty there. Went back to the States, did a tour of duty, I think it was at Bentwaters. Hello.
What was your job at Bentwaters?
At Bentwaters, I was a flight security sergeant. One of the things that they don't understand, they think security police is one career field. At that time, up until the 90s, there were two security police fields. One was security operations that dealt with priority A, B, and C resources, nuclear weapons, and other restricted areas, and the base defense, and things like that. And then we had law enforcement, which was another career field within security police. That was like gate guards. They did more domestic stuff, like responding to domestic fights and stuff like that. More like a police type.
Somewhere I read that, and this kind of leads into what happened in Rendlesham Forest, that you had a special identifying different kinds of aircraft.
Yeah, that's one of that's something. Well, it's more extensive than that. I had an assignment in '73 to '75, and it was at SAC headquarters in Omaha, Nebraska. And it was an elite unit I was in, and we had about 95 of us, the SAC Elite Guard, and our job was to provide security for the SAC command post, the SAC building 500 and above ground. Required a top secret clearance. I had a top secret clearance when I was an airman, and I got it there. And so I was privy. We had 36 generals there, and I was privy to doing their bodyguards and entry for the building and the command posts and stuff. There's like 5 stories underground there. And at the opportunity I had, is like they did a lot of research and development there, at least the plannings for it. And so there's a lot of briefings, classified briefings, that I would be providing security for. And so you just heard them. I mean, and a lot of them were on research and development and developing aircraft in the future, and the slides for them. And they would go, 50 years in the future there. Then when I got to Bentwaters, in the training class there, and they did this not just to me, they did this to everybody, all the security police, where they would put up silhouette cards, and you had to try to identify all the NATO aircraft, all the Warsaw Pact aircraft. And we did that on a monthly basis. So you could identify aircraft without lights coming in, dark. And so I was pretty familiar with that aircraft, and you couple with the top secret stuff I seen when I was at Offutt. There left no doubt of if it was a prototype aircraft or something like that, I would have recognized it.
Can I jump in here? Do you have multiple security oaths, or is it? I'm not sure how that works. Is there just one blanket oath that expires after a certain period of time? How does that work?
Okay. The top secret clearance is an upgrade from the secret, obviously. The secret requires a background, not a national agency check, okay, which is not really too hard. And then the top secret one is a background investigation, which is intensive. They go ask people you know, and people that know you. They ask people that know the people that know you. I mean, they just keep going. It gets pretty extensive. So I got awarded that clearance at Offutt. You maintain the clearance all the while you're in. Okay, you have it. But it might not be active. Like when I got to Bentwaters, it wasn't active till 2 months or maybe a month and a half after the Rendlesham Forest incident. And once that became active, I had the top secret reinstated, for when I was at Bentwaters. So I had a new job after the incident. I became the NCOIC of Plans and Programs, Security Police, where I wrote all the defense plans, the contingency plans, the security response options, base threat assessments. I mean, I did all that. So there's nothing there that in that purview of that job at Bentwaters that I didn't know what was going on there. And in our 4 forward operating locations in Germany, our 2 communication sites, Martlesham Heath, and its satellite, which I think is still was classified. It might be still classified. I won't say what it is. And so, I was really familiar after the fact with everything that was going on at Bentwaters. And the other thing is, I got there in July of 1980, 6 months before the incident. And I didn't leave there till June of 1984. And the only other person that stayed there that long with me was Colonel Halt. The rest of them pretty much PCS, permanent change of station, went back to the States within 6 months afterwards because they were just due to rotate back to the States. There was no, conspiracy to get rid of them or anything like that. Did I answer your question on the top secret?
Well,
like right now, I still have it. It's just not active.
Well, I'm not sure how it works in terms of you work for different agencies, different departments, if you have to, or if you just get a blanket clearance.
No.
In general,
No.
I mean, it's basically what I'm getting at. Is there anything you still cannot talk about to us or to anybody else that's still
Of course, I signed the NDA, when I retired, and there's certain things. Yeah. And matter of fact, I'll bring up why I can talk about Rendlesham. I was at separating from. I had my last tour of duty was at Grissom Air Force Base in Indiana, and when I was down at personnel and I'm separating, the NDA's there, and I'm looking at it. It's got contingency plans, this, that, the other, strikes, you name it. It's on there, but it didn't have anything about the incident at Bentwaters. The Rendlesham Forest incident. And I said, the staff sergeants there in personnel, I said, I need to have you check on, the Bentwaters incident of, December 26, 1980. And he said, okay. He says, what do you want to find out? I said, find out if it's classified. And he sent a message at that time. He called them Twixes. That was before all this stuff here. And he says, I'll get back to you when I get a message back. And I said, okay. So I'm being held up on, retirement, waiting for this message on the NDA. And Halt had given me a heads up on it. And that's the reason I asked about it, because when Halt, he had retired a couple years before I did. He told me, whatever you do, he says, ask about the Bentwaters thing. And they're going to tell you that nothing happened. I says, huh? He goes, yeah. And he says, you want that? He says, because you want us to be able to talk about it. I said, okay. So about 2 days go by, I get a call from the personnel sergeant down there. And he says, yep, we got a message back, come on in. So I went down there and I read, he says, you ain't gonna believe the response. He says, and I said, let me read it. And it said, nothing classified happens on those dates. So therefore, nothing needs to be put in the NDA. So I said, Sarge, can I keep a copy of this, or can you make it? He goes, I sure can. So that's why we're talking about it. I mean, the Air Force, I know they're really trying. They couldn't really say, yeah, something classified happened. If it leaked out, I guess it's a loose end. But is it any worse than having Halt and myself talk about it? I don't know.
Somebody made that decision. Anyway.
We should get into the incident that you keep referring to and get our listeners out of their state of suspense right now, because it gets very interesting and bizarre.
Very interesting,
to put it lightly. And Jim was right in the middle of it, so we'd like to hear.
Well, it was a real quiet night. Security was working 12-hour shifts because of the Christmas schedule, and law enforcement was working 8-hour shifts. So that meant that maintenance wasn't fixing airplanes. There was no flying going on, things like that. The shift started pretty normal. We did our guard mount at Bentwaters, and we talked. Then we transported over to Woodbridge. My security alert, I was in charge of security for Woodbridge that night. And my security alert team posted, the sentries and the entry controllers and the alarm response teams and all the restricted areas over there. And I started doing my normal stuff. I went around the perimeter and I did a lighting check and really mundane stuff. There was absolutely no activity going on as far as the base personnel. got around about midnight, and I had made pre-arrangements with Sergeant McCulley, the security response team leader, that we'd go to the chow hall at Woodbridge, and we'd have breakfast together. And when I arrived there, I was just got my first cup of coffee, and McCulley, he says, "Do you hear? They're trying to get a hold of you in the radio, Jim." I said, "Okay," and I couldn't hear because there's just too much background noise. And so we had direct line there. I picked up the direct line to CSC, and it's Sergeant Coffey. He's the senior security controller, and he says, "We need you to go out the East Gate," he says, "and contact the two police units out there, Police 4 and Police 5. I said, "Okay, what's going on?" And he says, "They'll brief you when you get there." He says, "But run code 2. And I'm thinking, code 2? I mean, it's running with lights. I mean, he says, "There's something, dangerous?" He says, "No." He says, "They're going to brief you on what's going on when you get out there." That was just completely, really strange due to the amount of terrorism we had and everything else going on at that time. I said, "Okay." So, the time, it takes about, 4 minutes to get there from the chow hall, going at 45 miles an hour. I arrive at the East Gate. If I get too detailed, just stop me, okay? I mean, please do. And I arrive at the East Gate, and I contact the senior law enforcement patrolman, who is Staff Sergeant Steffens. Steffens had been in 15 years. He was pretty seasoned. And I said, "What's going on?" He pointed over to Rendlesham Forest area, which is about 300 yards to the tree line. And I could see multiple color lights, and that flickering in the woods, which is very strange. I'd never seen that before. And I said, my first thought was, maybe it's an aircraft crash. It could be that. I said, "Do you hear a crash or anything?" He said, "Oh," he says, "that it didn't crash. That landed." I said, "That's impossible." I knew it was impossible because the trees over there in Rendlesham Forest, what the British do is they reconstitute the trees. They go ahead and let them grow for 10, 15 years, and then they cut them back down and plant more, and that's what they do. But all the trees are planted 5, 6 feet apart. So there's no way a plane can land there. It had to crash. Even I asked him I said, "Was it a chopper?" And he says, "No." He says, and I really wanted to convince Steffens that it was a crash, because that's the only thing it could have been. I had the other law enforcement airman, Burroughs, who was he was very young, and he was beside himself. I mean, he kept trying to interrupt Sergeant Steffens and I, which wasn't going to play very well, and it didn't. I told him to shut up and let, geez, that's all you need is a little pest, shut up, I'm trying to get information. One of the reasons is that if it is an aircraft crash, it means it might be something else that could be more hostile than that. And so anyway, I go over to the East Gate. It has a gate check there, and I pick up the phone. It's direct line to law enforcement, and I told law enforcement patch me through the CSC. Once I arrived there, we had a thing called chopping, change of operational command and control. Steffens was in charge, law enforcement, when I got there, but since they called security into it, I was in charge, so it was a security-related problem. And so I got patched through the Central Security Control, and all this happened in a matter of seconds. I don't know, it's not really, it was pretty instantaneous. There's 5 people on the line. I had this senior controller, Sergeant Coffey, I had Sergeant Gillard, the comp plotter, I had the flight lieutenant, I had the flight sergeant, oh boy, that's great, I forget his name. Anyway, I had those people on the line, and as I was talking to him, and Sergeant Coffey comes back in on the line and says, I didn't know this, but he had been contacting London Radar, RF Ballsy, our radar there, and then of course Bentwater's tower radar. And they triangulated. They lost a bogey, an object on the radar 15 minutes ago, they said, and it was over, near Woodbridge Base. So that there confirmed that it was probably an aircraft crash. And why that is important is because under the Status of Forces Agreement, we couldn't deploy off base as U.S. forces unless we had an emergency situation. And so the flight lieutenant gets a hold of Colonel Conrad, the base commander. This is all done telephonically through the wing command post. And Conrad gives us permission to go and investigate the crash. So I have a crash kit in the back of my Jeep. It's a big wooden box full of stuff. Some of the things I took out of it was the camera, the plotting board, where I can plot the entry control point for first responders. I have to establish that when I get out there. These are things that I was going to have to do. I was running the security response option, the protocol for aircraft crashes, what I was doing. And so I needed a couple airmen with me. The security airman was Airman Kabanzak, his first night on duty. I felt so sorry for him. And then, of course, he was another airman, so I grabbed him because we couldn't afford taking more security guys away from the restricted areas. And so we deployed. I deployed to the area where I set up an entry control point, and that was going to be Kabanzak. He had the only other radio out there besides mine. And when I was calling the CSC, when I was setting him up, I was getting radio breakup with Central Security Control, which is impossible because we have repeating units all over the twin bases. There's no way it would break up, but it was. And so I said, well, I'm going to use Kabanzak at the entry control point for a radio relay. Just relay everything I'm telling you. And he said, okay. And myself and Burroughs started heading toward the tree line, which is about 50 yards away. And as we approached, the multiple color lights in the woods they dissipated pretty much, and you were seeing more of a bright white light in there behind the trees. I would say it was maybe 15, 20 feet, maybe in. And so we got to the tree line. I started feeling physical effects like static electricity, things like that. I could, as I went into the tree line, and as I entered the tree line, I have Kabanzak to my left rear, which is 50 yards away, which I could see. And then I got Burroughs, he's to my right rear, maybe about 20 away. So as I enter in there, we have these earthen berms. Remember I said that the British would replant the trees and stuff like that used as a crop. And so those are part of the replanting. So even though these earthen berms would be about 5, I could see this white light behind one of the berms. And as I moved toward it, it was getting brighter. And it was a flash of light. And so I hit the ground, thinking it was an explosion. It was just a reaction. And there was, of course, no sound or anything like that. So, there was no damage. And so I got back up. And as I got over the top of the berm, I was having difficulty. I would say I was probably, at that time, 10, 15 feet away from where the white light was at. And this white light started to dissipate down. And I was having trouble walking. It was my movements were labored and things like that, like walking through a pool of water, waist deep. That was the effect of walking. I started taking those pictures too early, but at the end of the day, it wouldn't have made any difference anyway because of the radiation. They wouldn't have turned out. But I was snapping pictures all the time. as I got over the berm and the light was dissipating, you could start seeing the formation of a triangular craft there. And I think I used the last couple shots of the film.
So, Jim, would you consider yourself at this point to have you had the presence of mind to take pictures, and that seems pretty rare. A lot of these close encounter cases, people don't even think about that. It's just like their brains have been, whitewashed or whatever. But you were still alert enough to start documenting what was going on. And how did you feel mentally at this point, other than being, shocked, of course?
Well, I wasn't there yet. I was responding to a aircraft crash.
Right.
And you want to take pictures of the what happened.
But you were feeling. You said you were feeling physical effects. You were. Did you think about why?
Yeah, I couldn't understand that. I just could not understand it. And I couldn't understand it. So it was obvious to me at that point in time. I think I know where you're going with this. It was obvious with me at that time it was an aircraft crash. Mm-hmm. So the other SRO, security response option, I initiated is a helping hand situation, and that is a telephonic up-channel report of a possible hostile threat involving a priority A, B, or C resources, on the base. So I looked at it as a threat, and I initiated that. Even though CSC could not hear me, I'm still talking on the radio. And I continued to do that, and I initiated a help hand. Afterwards, I find out from Sergeant Coffey that they heard everything I said anyway on the radio. Even though I couldn't hear them, they heard everything I said. Mm-hmm. So they took the helping hand, they initiated, and this is really important, especially for all the people putting out trash stuff. The up-channel report goes to 3rd Air Force from 3rd Air Force in England to headquarters USAFE, which is at Ramstein, and then it goes up to the Pentagon, at headquarters Air Force. Because this is no exercise, this is a real world. And I told you about what we had on these bases. So we had these 6 squadrons of A-10s, and we have 10,000 people, and, a lot of resources. Mm-hmm. And so the up channel was done. But after I made the up channel report, the light had dissipated to a part where it was just showing light underneath this craft, and on this triangular craft that was there, it was opaque, but it had globular lights moving throughout the craft, and they're moving quite fast, and then they were slowing. This is, I know that this is not something that is in our inventory. Okay, I know it ain't. Right. So my emotions were going from intrigued, scared, I don't know, all kinds of stuff.
And prior to this, though, had you been briefed on, or were you familiar with this so-called UFO, UAP, whatever it was called back then, this phenomenon? Did you consider that it existed in the first place, or did you go, oh, this is a UFO or some sort of other intelligence involved here?
No, we all seen like UFO movies or something like that. Mm-hmm. But no, I never believed in it. I thought there was something wrong with anybody that would. Right. Yeah, I thought they were all loony. No, I did not believe in anything like that. I think that kept me grounded, though. I think in a way it kept me more grounded.
What I'm thinking is that you went through every other possibility before you came to the realization that, wow, this is really something unknown, unidentified. And Dan had something.
Well, I was just going to say, it would almost be in your interest not to admit something like there's a UFO in the forest, because that could jeopardize your career. Would that be fair?
No, it's more than fair. It's a career ender. And this came later on in the discussion we had on that. But no, we never used the term UFO in that. I refer to it as craft. That's what I call it. And as the lights stopped moving, the colored lights, and it was just opaque, and of course there's light underneath. And at that point in time, I wasn't sure if I was going to survive that, because I looked back to Kabanzak, and he was like motionless. I don't know if he was just scared or whatever. And Burroughs, he wasn't moving either, just standing there. I mean, and that's about as much time I could afford to be distracted is with them. I just wrote them off. I thought, well, I wonder if I'm going to be able to still function. So I started writing down as much as I can. I took notes because I figured write down as much information you can. If I don't survive it, then at least the command element of the base has information where they can make some decisions or some assessments well above my pay grade. And so that's what I started doing. That was the only thing I had. And of course, I had nothing to measure craft with or anything like that. I was the first thing I was trying to understand is how could it be fixed above the forest floor, because it looked solid. So I went over and tried to push it, and it's solid. It don't even move a fraction of an inch. And I'm looking underneath, and this technology looks like light, but it's coming down in the three spots, and it's made impressions which I could see about 1.5 inches in the ground, and it was fascinating. I mean, what kind of technology is that? I mean, I know they are ours, or in the James book of aircraft or something. So I pasted off. By that time, when being that close to the craft, I didn't have the effect of the labored movements. They had stopped, but I still had the electricity, like on the face and clothes and stuff like that. I could still feel that static electricity, but not as bad. And so as I pasted off, all I have to paste it with is my stride. I took 3 large strides. That's 9 feet, roughly. I say it was between 6.5 feet tall, which was sort of hard because of the berms, trying to figure it out. I'm 6 foot tall, so that was the estimate. It was had a sort of like a larger dorsal fin coming out of the back of it. The skin of the craft had, I'm looking at things to make it fly. The skin of the craft is absolutely smooth. I say it's like black glass. That's what it felt like. But it was metal of some sort. I just couldn't determine what kind of metal it was. It had no seams, no rivets, had no intakes, had no areas, had no flaps, had no windows like for a crew compartment or anything like that. That's all stuff that you need to, well, this is before drones. All you need to have an aircraft fly. This thing was a brick. I mean, it couldn't fly. I mean, there's nothing on it that would make it able to fly. And that was even more confusing. I mean, how did, yeah.
There were symbols on it too, weren't there? Some kind of symbol.
Yeah. Yeah, when I came back around on the other side of it, I could see symbols or writing. I thought, and I went, "Oh, this might be okay," It was something, because as far as identifying it, and it was pictorial stuff. It wasn't like we have like with numbers and things like that. Yeah. I was hoping it would, say something like experimental something or maybe anything, but it was avoided that. The symbols, which were fascinating, there was 5 of them, and I stretched out about 3 feet wide. There's 5 of those. There's one on top of them, which is larger. And there was a triangular one with a circle around it with 3 little circles on the inside. And so I'd been, as I went from touching the smoothness of the craft, I went and touching the bottom glyphs, and that felt like going from the black glass feeling to like sandpaper, like it was etched into the side of the craft. And so, I copied all that stuff down. I went back around, and I'm starting to feel a little bit better. I don't think I'm going to die because it's pretty benign and it's not doing nothing. And it's, I've touched it twice now. Nothing happened, so it's pretty. I figured I was pretty safe. It's not going anywhere. All I got to do is wait for response forces to come. And so I had the time to do more investigation, and I said I'm going to go back around and I'm going to check out those symbols again because I was fascinated by those. So I got back around them, and the large one on the top, the triangle one, and I went to touch that one because it was so bold. It was so large. And when I touched it, I got just this blinding white light where I couldn't see nothing. And in the middle of that, I was seeing numbers and ones and zeros and everything. I don't think it was very long, maybe seconds. I gained my wits about me. All I did was just lift my hand off, and it stopped immediately. Now, I use the term brilliant white light. It cannot be. It's what it appeared to be, but it cannot be. It's got to be a technology I do not understand either, because that forest is dark. It is almost black. And if I had anything out there that was that type of brightness, my night vision would have been gone for 40 minutes at least, okay? But I had all my night vision. I mean, everything was clear. So it wasn't light as, even though it appeared to be light, I don't know. It's unknown. It's technology I don't understand. I still don't understand it.
So at this point, what is your working hypothesis in your mind, which is still very lucid, it sounds like? Were you thinking maybe this is a psyop, maybe this is a setup that's designed to see how I react or my friends, or were you just buying into completely?
What? Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not.
Are you joking?
That's what
No.
The misinformation is trying to say, right? They're trying to,
Oh, there's so much. I don't. That's one of them. I mean, there's so much. I mean,
but you were there.
No.
And
we don't do psyop stuff in overseas bases, okay? And
right
where nuclear weapons are. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So what was your model then? I mean, where was your mind at this point?
Well,
and,
at that
and
time,
where was John Burroughs during all this?
Still outside this area of light that I was in. He was still outside there, motionless, and Kabanzak was the same way. So I don't know what it was. We theorize now it was different inside this bubble around the craft. I mean, being right in the immediate area. I mean, it was different. There was something going on there, stuff we don't understand today. But after putting my hand on it and the bright light and all that stuff, I felt there was communication being done. Of some sign. I felt. I said, well, this is a drone. I mean, I didn't call it a drone, but I said it's unmanned. Mm-hmm. It's not big enough for that. I'm trying to rationalize it. It's way beyond any technology that we have. Okay. Still, it's way beyond any technology we have. The other thing is, the craft was hot, warm to touch. The air temperature was 32 degrees. And I would guess maybe the temperature of the craft, the skin of it was probably 50. It felt warm. We had another team investigate that immediately that morning. Sergeant Nevels was put out there by the base commander, Colonel Conrad, and we taught. And he actually he did a whole chapter in about the second night in his investigation that morning after we went back in. And he says, Jim, the radiation right there where that craft was 100 times beta radiation levels. He said, normal. He says, the warmness wasn't that it was hot, like from air. And he said it was radioactive, Oh, that's great.
Which you got exposed to.
Yeah, it's really funny. The only part the radiation was is right where the craft was, underneath it. The trees where it went one up, they continued. It was specifically Monroe says that's his first name, Sergeant Nevels. He says it was 100 times the beta radiation was, and it doesn't have a long shelf life. You'd have to ask an expert on how long that is, but it was still hot, when he went out there that morning, and tested all the areas per Colonel Conrad's orders. He had to investigate the landing site and takeoff site. So, yeah. Anything else on that, Dan? I don't think I answered. I think you have some more questions. You have another question. You must.
Oh.
You look like it.
I look like I have a question. Could be.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the code. So as you're touching this thing, you start seeing ones and zeros, right?
Yeah, it's It's
You're writing.
I was pretty. I didn't write nothing down with the code.
Okay.
Um,
When did
no,
that occur?
when I went home, I couldn't sleep. I was up all day, and I think it was around midnight. I got back up again because I couldn't sleep, and all I could see is in like when I closed my eyes and in the mind's eye, all I could see is these ones and zeros. I said, "Damn, I said this is screwed up because I'm going to have to go to base hospital because I don't know if it's trauma or what. I didn't know what it was, and I said all I know is that this will probably be the end of my career. I mean, what am I going to do? I go into the base clinic and said, well, I had exposure to a craft of unknown origin on that day, and then I'm got ones and zeros running through them. That's the end of your career. And I had made that decision to make Air Force my career well before that, and I just thought if it keeps up, I'm going to have to do that, and I was pretty convinced that's what I'd have to do. There's nothing else to do, and so I wasn't sleeping anyway. So I make a pot of coffee. I'm not going to sleep anyway, and then I started second guessing things, and I grabbed my notebook off where I had my gears thrown, and I'm looking at my notes. I'm looking at the symbols. I'm looking at those things, and I said, I close my eyes and then I go, I think I can write those things down. And so the only paper I had was in the back of the notebook, and so I grab a pen and I start writing, 0 0 1 1 0 0 1 1 1 0 0, and when I started doing that, I felt better. I went, oh, this is all right. And so I get about halfway through. I'm just writing. Notebook's only, like 6 inches by 5 inches or 4. It's not really big. So I write down 16 pages. But halfway through there, my pen stops. You ever have a pen that freezes? Yeah. So I'm looking through my my drawer of pens, and I was panicking. And I find that, excuse me, I find another one that works. So I start writing it down. And, okay, yeah, that feels good. That feels good, And so I write down 16 pages, and I can't go any farther, and I can't see the ones and zeros anymore in my head. And I stop, and I go, whoa. You know what, Jim? I think you just dodged a bullet here. I think you're gonna be all right. I'm tired. I drank coffee too on top of it. So I said, well, I might be all right. And sure enough, when I went to bed, I fell asleep right away. And I woke up the next morning and I felt fine. And I went, well, I'm gonna keep that quiet. Me losing my trauma, losing my mind stuff. I think that's something I'll keep private.
So
and that's how that started.
Yeah, one thing I think we ought to go back to, because we kind of left that hanging, is so you're walking around the craft, you're noticing the symbols. Tell us about what happened. Did the craft leave? What's kind of the end of that story?
Well, yeah, and then as I had been walking around, then I figured I start seeing the activity of the lights again coming. Excuse me. And the fabric of the craft start moving. So I back away. And I get maybe 20 feet away, 15 feet away. And I get back on the ground. I'm trying to dig a hole right there at that point in time because I thought I must have activated something by touching it, by touching the symbols in particular. And maybe it was going to explode or something like that. And what happened is the white light started generating again. And I couldn't see no color. And this is on mainly the rear, or the bottom of the craft. But it did move up, and it started to move back a few feet to trees. Remember, I said the trees are only planted 5 and 6 feet apart? Okay. And so that's impossible. I paced it off. It's 9 feet. I know that for a fact. And then it stops, goes up to the top of the canopy of the forest. And all while this is happening, there is no sound. There is no air displacement, anything like that. It gets to the top of the trees, makes a slight right turn, and takes off in the blink of an eye. It's gone. At that point in time, I'm just standing there like in, I guess, shock. I hear Burroughs, I hear him beside me, and he's pointing at up in the trees and said, "I see it over there." I says, you can't see nothing here. You know, it's too dark. And he takes off. We had a concept, we have a team concept, you never leave your team member. Well, he blew that. So, well, he's an airman and he wasn't too bright. Okay, that's exactly it. And he was excited. And I don't know what he's looking at. Why go ahead and get all excited after it takes off? I don't know. And anyway, he takes off, so I run. I'm running after him. And we don't have to run too far. We run maybe, excuse me, 30 feet, something like that, 40 feet. And we hit the first set of fences, barbed wire and that separates the tree line from the farmer's field that's there. And, you know, back in that day, we could hop over them pretty easy. I couldn't do it today. We hopped over those two fences. I was running after him across the field, which was unplowed. It was just earthen field. But there was pockets of ice and water. I fell down about 2 or 3 times. I was soaked. And finally we get past the farmer's houses. He finally stops, and I was glad of that because I couldn't run anymore. I was spent. And I says, "What the hell are you chasing?" And because there's nothing there, you know. And he says, "A UFO," and he points in the opposite direction, like over here. And he says, "Look down my arm." So I look down his arm. I said, "What is it? What are you looking at?" And he goes, "Over there." And far on the horizon, there's this little faint light. Okay, a real faint light. I says, "That's the Orford Lighthouse."
Orford Nest Lighthouse. Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, "Huh?" And then I turned around and I seen the craft again over on the far end of Rendlesham Forest, the Keeple Green area. And then it just started at a slow speed. I'm going to say 300 miles an hour. That's a guess. Take out over the north toward the North Sea, and that was it. On the way back in, I mean, he goes, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to tell him? What are we going to tell him?" I said, "Well, first, you're not going to tell him nothing. I'm going to do the talking." "Oh, right." He said, because he's using words like UFO. he's not going to use that word with me.
Yeah, not a good word to use.
No, anyway, we get on in, we turn our weapons, and Sergeant Chandler's the flight sergeant, by the way. I couldn't think of his name earlier. And I meet Sergeant Chandler, and I says, "You ain't gonna believe what happened." He goes, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I was dispatched to the East Gate when you went deployed out in the woods." He says, "So I was going to help with the relays and that for the radio and that." I said, "Do you see everything?" He said, "I see everything." I went, "There's nothing more to explain." He says, and that's pretty much is on the way back in, like I'm going to go back on the posting bus coming back in. I went over my notes and that, and I said, "Well, what could I call this? I'm sure in the hell not going to call it a UFO. So I came up with the term craft of unknown origin, and it was so precise and correct. It wasn't, me fabricating anything. It wasn't people. That's the first thing that people usually say when they see sightings nowadays. I see a UFO. Well, did you? You sure you see a UFO? You sure it's not? There's a 99% probability it's man-made. Okay.
Planet Venus or something.
Yeah, the Anomalies got this concept, and then if it isn't a UFO, they have a concept that's alien. I don't know where they come up with all this horse shit, because it is. They have no idea. They're just making stuff up as they go. So anyway, I called it craft unknown origin, and I stuck with it, and that was good because we were getting debriefed by Captain Verano, the day flight commander. He just started shaking his head. He goes, "Gentlemen," he says, "there's just no way to report this." He says Blue Book ended in '69, and Blue Book, yeah, but that's just a disinformation program, by the way. But it ended in '69. There was no way to report it up. But there was a report made, a helping hand report, which I later find out many years later from. That's covered well in the book. All this stuff's covered in the book in absolute detail. Jim, how did you cover everything in such detail in this book? Well, I'll tell you how. I answer my own question. When I was in the Air Force, I kept journals of what happened. And they weren't because I just like to write. It's because it's called CYA. Okay, something happened. That's right. So I had journals. When I was at Bentwaters, I had 4 years worth of them, but I kept them all while I was in for 20 years. So I used them to write the book. And then when I got out in '94 or '93, and I couldn't sleep and all that kind of stuff, I was having trouble sleeping. I was down to maybe 2 hours of sleep a night. And I was just a wreck. And I went to my MD, my doctor, and she said, "I can give you a med." She says, "But there ain't nothing. This has got to be more mental than that." And I says, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah." She says, "Would you mind going to a psychiatrist? I'll refer you." I said, "Anything so I can sleep."
Right.
Yeah, so I did that, and I get to the psychiatrist, and then the great thing is, at that time, I seen her maybe 4 or 5 times. She says, "I think what we need to do is do a regression because something must have happened. She says, maybe in your childhood or something." I'm thinking, oh no, abused as a child or something. I said, oh no. Yeah, I was like, oh no, not that. And I said, okay. So, and then her notes, which is it used to be 8mm, Super 8. She taped them, but those were her notes. We did the first session. And she says, when I come out of it, that hypnosis is great. You feel really relaxed when you come out of that. And she says, "I think we need to do one more session." She says, "and we need to talk about Woodbridge." I went, "Oh no!" But I was relieved too. There was no abuse when I was a child or something, so I was pretty relieved. That's good news. Yeah.
So, Jim, let me point out something. I tend to be the timekeeper in this our little visit here, and we've got about 10 more minutes left to go. And so there are a couple other places I'd like to take us if we could.
Sure.
And how about Linda Moulton Howe, who's somebody you know and Dave knows pretty well. Was she instrumental in helping you? It seemed like you and John Burroughs met Linda Moulton Howe back in 2010 in Rendlesham Forest. Did she have something to do with deciphering the code?
No.
Didn't?
No. The cipher was done by Nick, a guy named Nick from Prometheus Entertainment, and then that was the initial one. Linda, after I got that decipher from them, when I was talking to the producer, I was like really freaked over it. And so then I called Linda and I says, how about if I send you like 5 pages of it and you go ahead, because she was after me. She was calling me like 3 times a day. Okay. She would not leave me alone on it. And this is after, well, actually the binary was discovered by Linda and Burroughs when we were doing a film shoot down in Phoenix. And I went back too far in the book because they were asking about a phone number or something like that, or a date. And I went back, and Linda sees the zeros and ones. She goes, "Oh," she goes, "What's that?" It's for, it's 30-some years later. Okay, it wasn't my best phone. I'm thinking, oh, I don't have a problem telling her that's. I thought it was. I still thought it was because of the trauma. And she says, I told her, I said, "Oh, I wrote that stuff down." I said, after the incident. And she goes, "That's binary code." And that was the first time I knew what binary code was, by the way. And she was after to get it from me, copies. And I said, "Let me think about it." But when the producer called me, I said, "We have an expert out here that can look at it." And I said, "Okay." So after I got the back, we did a conference, me and the producer. And when I got the information, I was like pretty freaked out over it, because I don't know how it could ever make sense. It's just impossible for me to put that together. So I called Linda up and I said, "Okay, I'll give you like 4 or 5 pages of it and fax it to you." And she was elated. And when I sent it to her, she sent it off to somebody out in Australia and someone in North Carolina, and she had someone from Colorado look at it. She had quite a few people look at it. Mm-hmm. But she calls me up then like 2 or 3 days later, and she's like just ecstatic. She goes, "There's a message." I went, "Yeah, okay, so tell me what your message was found." And she just starts going through it, and she tells me, and I go, "Okay." She says, "Well, you're not too excited." I said, "Well, no, I just want to confirm." I said, "They already deciphered it with Prometheus Entertainment, had people decipher it." And she was pissed, let me tell you. I don't know why. I guess she wanted to be the first or something. I don't know. I mean, it's all about UFO opportunists and entertainers. Okay, I'm not one. I just wanted to find out. I thought it was just going to be a mess. I didn't think there was never going to be a message there.
So what was the message?
I'm going to go back. Remember I stopped in the middle of that and it still made sense, and I went back and started writing again. I mean, I can't even get my arms around that.
The fact that it was binary code in 1980, I mean, that was just really the beginning of the computer era, at least in a widespread fashion. So that in itself is amazing. And you just said you didn't recognize it as binary code or any other sort of recognizable, code at that point, of course, because not many people would have. And so,
no, I mean, it wasn't in the criminal justice curriculum at all.
Right. And why would it have been? I mean, yeah.
We didn't have computers back then. I mean, we didn't have computers.
So to the best of your knowledge, Jim, what is the message that those people decoded?
Well, it turned out there was, it has 7 coordinates in it, but one of them is repeated twice, so there's 6, okay? And they're actual coordinates from around the world, and the experts say it's because of these are low resistant gravity areas. And there's like one in Sedona, one in off of Belize, one somewhere in Peru, one in Greece, one in Egypt, one in China. And then the one that's repeated twice sits about 60 miles off of the coast of Ireland, which in a documentary they call High Brazil, but that's just the documentary calling it stuff, but that's where it sits. But it also sits on directly the latitude exactly where Woodbridge is at. So, but that's mentioned twice. And then we have satellite imaging that shows that there is an island there, but it's 90 feet below the ground, the water level, and it's still submerged. So we don't know. I mean, it's a curious spot.
No, the other thing,
some of the reasons.
I was going to say the other thing I think I heard about that code was there some indication in the code of the origin of this craft, like where.
Well, the origin of the craft, and plus, like I said, I had impressions at the time and the communication. I never ever thought it was alien, never have, and it's our assessment based on the facts that we have that is actually us from the future. They're or interdimensional travelers, you know. Oh, by the way, interdimensional travel is time travel. I mean, it's probably happened, everything simultaneously or whatever the theory is, but that's what we believe it is. And it makes sense because they had triangular crafts before we did. That was a triangular craft. Plus, why would they mark their vehicles? We do that. The other thing is, why use binary? And then the other thing is, why have it in English?
Yeah, well,
so
here's my burning question. I've got about 20 of them, but I'll
okay.
confine it to just this one, and that is for you. Why Jim Penniston? Were you just happened to be the guy there, or do you think there's some other reason that it came to you specifically? What are your thoughts about that?
It's something I bantered around for years. In a way, it was Christmas time, so I look at it as maybe a gift of insight or something. That's why I never make any money off it. All my honorariums, all my book proceeds, I give to charity. I've never collected anything off this. How could you? How could you? You know, you can't. You know, it's not a gift.
A lot of people do, but you were.
Well, a lot of people, and there's no one that's been out there. Only a few is because this here, I think, is I think that they have my co-author is writing a second book, and that is strictly on the binary code and his discoveries, which have just blew me away. By the way, I mean, and the thing is, math does not lie, and this is on a global scale down to an inch at different places, and it's unlocking different information at each of those sites that also back up the interdimensional travel kind of thing. The other impression I had, besides the feeling that they were us, I mean, I had that impression, so I call that communication at the time. Another impression I tell everybody is that they had, even in the future, 8,100 years from now, which is in the code, they're still waiting for first contact. So, you know, yeah. I do believe there's a reason why that the craft was unmanned, because probably interdimensional travel, it cannot be done for human beings. I don't think it can be done. It might be too rough. Maybe that's why they developed cyber beings or something like that, like Greys or something like that, because I don't discount other legitimate encounters. I mean, some are just unexplainable. And
so do you think it could have been you from the future, or some lineage of your family? I mean, have you thought about that before? Why not? As long as we're getting crazy.
Yeah, I lived 40 years in crazy. You know,
yeah, well,
Sure you did.
I don't know. I don't know the reason. I don't know. I can sit here and guesstimate. I'm going to put some of that in the second book. I wanted Gary just to write on the binary, because the book, the Rendlesham Enigma, is definitive on the incident. But I might put my theories and what I think and my impressions and stuff in that. I don't know. I think I might do that.
Well, as the person who witnessed this and lived through it, sitting here talking to you for just 90 minutes or so, to me, it discounts all of these other things that people are trying to write about. You know, we kind of briefly talked. You sent us a big email about your reasons for not. Well,
we talked about them. I mean, you can't discount over 200 witnesses in a 3-day period.
Yeah,
which is U.S. military, U.S. and British civilians. The radar triangulated, which was MOD, broad sea radar, and Bentwaters, which is USAF radar, and you got Heathrow, which was civilian. You can't, with the indentions in the ground, the radiation, the fact that, I mean, I just go on and on and on. The other thing is, the Air Force they don't do exercises like that overseas. And one of the big things I did want to talk about, we got any time on it, just quickly.
One thing, I've got another obligation coming up here.
Okay.
Quick. So maybe, do you think we could cajole you into coming back and having a part about this? Because it seems like we always have questions that never get answered in one.
Okay. Let's do that.
Yeah, do that.
Let's do that.
And we'll just negotiate a time that works for you.
I mean, it doesn't have to be another 90-minute thing. It could be 30 minutes or whatever, just because I feel like we're leaving a lot of loose ends here.
I do too.
We did get the important part.
I do too.
The important part is the witness testimony, because you're the primary witness, and that's more compelling to me, and I think to most people, than reading 20 books of people, speculating about blah, blah, blah. It's like, if you listen to Jim talk for an hour, you're going to come away going, yeah, this happened. We need to understand what it means now. We just wipe away all the other crap surrounding it. That's how I feel, at least, and I'm sure Dan agrees with me.
I do.
Yeah.
So let's negotiate for another appearance on Anomalies,
Okay.
and we can kind of finish this discussion. But thank you so much for being on with us today.
Yes, thank you, Jim.
Oh, I want to thank both of you. I really appreciate it for such a living room type discussion. I appreciate that.
All right.
The best kind, we think.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Take care, Jim. And we'll be in touch at part 2.
Okay, all the best.
Okay,
All right,
thank
you too.